My name is Milja. I am 58 years old. I have been married for 16 years and am the mother of a son. Every morning I would wake up at 7, drink my coffee, get my son ready for school, and see my husband off to work. My life looked perfect from the outside. A nice home, a regular routine, a responsible child, and a seemingly loving husband. But everything was only that way on the surface. That morning was no different from any other, or so I thought. After dropping my son Daniel off at school, I stopped by the grocery store. When I returned home, there was a notification on my phone screen. An unknown number had sent me a few photos. At first, I didn't want to open them. But that voice inside me, that unsettling feeling, my hands trembling, I swiped the screen. What I saw froze my blood. My husband Paul was in our living room, laughing with 2 women, one blonde and one brunette, and one of those women was leaning against his knee. I recognized the curtains in the background. I recognized the carpet. This was our home. In what I thought was my peaceful haven, my husband was with other women. The first thing I felt wasn't anger. It wasn't shock either. It was emptiness. It was as if everything inside me had been sucked out at once. My heart, my brain, my stomach. Everything went silent. I sat on the floor and stared at the photos for a long time. I didn't even cry. It was such a deep devastation. The only thing I felt was nothing. Then I messaged that unknown number. "Who are you?" The reply came a minute later. "Who I am doesn't matter, but who he is does. Wake up, Milja." That evening, when Paul came home, I had set the table. I acted as if everything were normal. While Daniel was doing his homework in his room, Paul was drinking his soup, and I was silently watching him. I couldn't take it anymore. "What did you do today?" I asked. He answered without hesitation. "It was busy. The meetings didn't end." He didn't even look at my face. I took my phone out of my pocket, opened the photos, and placed them in front of him. I said only one sentence. "These must be from the meetings, too." His expression at that moment was something I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was as if he had been doused with ice-cold water. He turned pale and couldn't gather his words. This old thing was a project meeting," he stammered. "It was such a terrible lie." I just smiled. "Yes, I suppose you were explaining the budget to the woman leaning on your knee." I slowly cleared the table. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I just stood up and said, "Give me 5 days. I need to decide what to do with this house, with this life." I thought about it all night. I asked myself, who am I? For all these years, I had forgotten my own desires, my dreams, even myself. I had become just a wife, a mother. But I was Milja. When I was young, my dream was to create my own boutique brand. I wanted to study fashion, but marriage, pregnancy, responsibilities, I had put everything on hold. But I didn't want to put it off anymore. On the morning of the 5th day, after preparing breakfast for Paul and my son, I turned to Paul and said only this: "I want a divorce." He looked at me in shock. "Milja, this is a mistake. We can fix it." I cut him off. "You destroyed my home. Now I'm going to build my own world." The divorce process was tough. I had no money, no savings. I had to start from scratch. But there was a strange strength inside me. I had suppressed that strength for years. Now it had awakened. I started with my mother's old sewing machine. I cut up old clothes and re-sewed them. I opened a small social media account. I shared the bags and scarves I designed. In 3 months, I made 11 sales. It was little, But it showed me. I can do this. My life was slowly taking shape, but the real change hadn't even begun yet. When the divorce proceedings were officially filed, we were still living in the same house. Silence had become the loudest sound in that house. He was like a stranger to me now. Sometimes I would wait for Daniel to fall asleep, then go into the bathroom and cry for hours with my mouth covered. My tears were like the cry of a woman who had been silenced for years. But no matter what, I wouldn't go back. Paul tried to back down from time to time. "Don't do this for Daniel. I made a mistake, I'll make it up to you. We're a family." But there was one thing he didn't understand. I was an individual too. I mattered too. At night, I stayed up all night at the sewing machine. Insomnia left a hollow in my eyes. But there was a revival within me. Slowly, my followers began to grow. One day, someone wrote on Instagram, "Your energy is very special. If you attend an event, many people will recognize you." I attended my first fashion event. I had a tiny table, 3 scarves, 2 fabric bags, and a little hope. The other tables were massive. Professional prints, large stands, famous designers. Someone stood beside me. They looked at the bags, touched them, and smiled. "Did you make these?" they asked. I lowered my head. "Yes, all of them at home, with an old machine." She extended her hand. "I'm Alice. I'm the marketing manager for a boutique chain. We need unique spirits like yours." I thought to myself, this must be a joke. It was too good to be true. She gave me her card. "Call me on Monday. Let's chat." On Monday, my hand trembling, I called Alice. She was so kind and sincere. After hanging up, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared into space for minutes. This was a beginning. Small, but a real step. But life is like that. It comes with sweet hope, then loves to test you. I said the divorce process was difficult, didn't I? One night, Paul stormed in yelling, "What kind of nonsense is this, Melia? What did you tell the lawyer? Half of the property belongs to me. Don't forget that." I saw him this angry for the first time in my life, but I was standing my ground. For the first time, too. Yes, half of it is yours. But whose are the years spent in this house? The sleepless nights, the dreams that were ignored. I fell silent. I didn't continue. Because sometimes the strongest words are silence. That night, Daniel woke up and came to me. "Mom, why is Dad yelling at you?" I held him in my arms. "Because your mom isn't silent anymore. Meetings with..." Alice began. "My bags, scarves, even the jacket I made from an old curtain fabric were all well received. One day I would have my own shelf in a small boutique. But for that, I needed an investment. I had no money. I couldn't even get a loan because I had no assets in my name. But I had something. Faith. And sometimes that is more valuable than money." One night after Daniel had fallen asleep, I called my mother. "Mom, I want to ask you for something, but I'm ashamed. Melia, the only thing to be ashamed of is staying silent in the face of injustice. Say what you want." She sold her belongings and lent me the money. I accepted it, crying. "I'll pay you back double." "Just smile again, Melia. Smile so that Daniel can smile too." My first collection was ready. 7 bags, 5 scarves, 2 jackets. They were displayed in a tiny corner. That day I sold 2 bags and 1 scarf. On the bus ride home, as I looked out the window, something rose within me. I didn't cry this time. I smiled. "I'm being reborn," I said, and a deep voice inside me whispered, "Nothing is over yet. You're just getting started." Even though the first sales were small, They sparked an indescribable feeling inside me. The woman who had been silenced, suppressed, and ignored for years was slowly awakening. I was no longer the same woman in the mornings. I no longer carelessly gathered my hair or left without looking in the mirror. Every morning as I prepared breakfast for Daniel, a small smile would appear on my face, because this time I was living for myself as well. One day, the boutique owner called. "Miss Melia, we want a special collection from you. Spring-themed. Only 10 pieces. Are you ready?" Was I ready? Maybe not with everything I had. But a strong voice inside me said, "Yes." For the first time, I fully believed in myself. I went to New York to buy fabric. I selected each piece of fabric with my own hands. When I sat down at the sewing machine, I didn't just have fabric in my hands. I had my past. Those nights spent crying, those dinner tables where I was humiliated, those birthdays where I was ignored. With each stitch, I healed a little more. The collection was ready. The colors were soft, but the meaning was profound. I named it Rebirth. Each piece was the silent cry of a woman reborn from the ashes of her past. The launch day arrived. A small event was held at Alice's boutique. Strangers came. Women touched the pieces and asked about their stories. "There seems to be pain behind this piece." "Yes," I said, "but in the end there is also hope." A woman hugged me. "Your story is the same as mine. If you succeeded, so can I." At that moment, I realized I wasn't just selling products. I was selling courage. At the end of the week, it was Daniel's birthday. I was going to have a small celebration. There were no longer those old crowded tables, but there was peace. While I was making the cake, Daniel looked at me and said, "Mom, you're happier now. I love you more this way." That sentence shattered me, because a child's greatest assurance is the sparkle in their mother's eyes. One morning, Paul came again. This time, his tone was different. "I heard you're doing something. Congratulations." Congratulations? I couldn't believe the words coming from the mouth of a man who had belittled me for years, dismissing my dreams. "Thank you," I said. But inside I thought, I no longer need your approval. It was April. I received the sales report for the boutique. My collection was sold out. Alice called me into her office. "Melia, we no longer see you as just a designer. We want to see you as a partner." At that moment, I thought my heart would stop. Melia, who had been excluded and looked down upon for years, defined only as someone's wife or someone's mother, was now a businesswoman. That night, I lay in bed. As I stared at the ceiling, I said to myself, I didn't come into this world just to be someone's part. I am the heroine of my own story, and the woman inside me. That suppressed, silenced woman. She had finally awakened. That morning I opened my eyes as the sun gently streamed through my window. I had looked at that same window for years, but for the first time that morning, the light looked different. Perhaps it wasn't the window that had changed, but me. When I stood in front of the mirror to wash my face, a shiver ran through me. Perhaps the lines under my eyes were more pronounced, but there was something there, strength. For years I had looked at that mirror only as a wife or a mother. Today, for the first time, I looked at it as Melia. I was working on my new collection. I named it From My Ashes, because I wasn't just sewing fabric. With every stitch, I was transforming my own past. Stitch by stitch, I had turned a room in my house into a workshop. It was small, but it was mine. Time seemed to stand still there. Everything was mine, unique to me. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. At night, Daniel slept to the sound of the sewing machine. Once he opened his eyes slightly and asked, "Mom, why are you smiling more now?" I swallowed. "Because I've made peace with myself, my dear," I said. The boutique was growing. My story was shared on social media. A journalist wanted to interview me. "Ms. Milia, where did you find this strength?" he asked. I smiled. "From those who hurt me the most," I said. Because I knew it was those who hurt me the most who forced me to rise from the ashes. Their condescension, their treatment of me like sandpaper, had actually shaped me. I wouldn't thank them, but I wasn't angry with them anymore either. One evening, an old friend called, Maryam, whom I hadn't seen in years. "I'm proud of you, Milia," she said. I cried, because for the first time in years, someone valued me just for being me, for my achievements, my steps, my choices. A letter came from Daniel's school. His teacher wrote that he was much happier and more confident with his friends at school. My eyes filled with tears, because the hardest part of motherhood was this: if you're not happy, your child can't find peace either. As I healed, Daniel healed too. As I grew stronger, he embraced life more strongly. One day, while walking in the market, I ran into Paul. He was with his young girlfriend. Our eyes met. I didn't look away. I didn't even say hello. But I walked with great confidence on my face. He looked away, because none of my words, none of my glances belonged to him anymore. At that moment, I knew, without looking in the mirror, I was no longer that old woman. That night, as I lay in bed, Daniel quietly came to my side. "Mom," he said, "when I grow up, I want to marry someone like you." I thought my heart would stop. At that moment, for the first time in my life, I was proud of my own story. And in that mirror, there was no longer just a woman. There was a warrior. At first, I felt like a guest in my own home. Then, an unwanted person. And then, nobody. Paul had officially left the house, but the deed was still in his name. I received a notice from his lawyer. Vacate the house within 15 days. At that moment, a knot inside me untangled. I didn't shed a tear, because I finally understood. This house wouldn't break me, because I had already rebuilt myself. A box, a suitcase, a child, and me. I set out again. I looked at my son Daniel. "Don't be afraid," I said. "Now we'll build our own home, a real happy nest." We temporarily moved into a friend's small apartment. It was much smaller than my old place, but it was freedom, and it was filled with hope. My boutique business was growing. Customers were increasing. But I was no longer just sewing and selling clothes. I was sewing and selling a life. A customer came in. She was a quiet, timid woman. She was being abused by her husband. She quietly took my hand. "Can I be like you?" I looked into her eyes. "You already are," I said. "You just haven't believed it yet." In that moment, I realized something. I could lift others up. Not just myself. I noticed the empty shop in the neighborhood. It was small. It was dilapidated, but I could see it in my mind. The rent was high. I hesitated for a moment. Then I said to myself, "Milia, you will show how a woman can build an empire from a ruined home." I invested all my savings, every penny I had earned working day and night, into that shop. I even gave it a name, Rebirth, because I am one of those who know what it means to start over in life. The opening day arrived. I raised the shop's shutter with excitement. My first customer walked through the door, and I greeted her without my hand trembling, because I was no longer just a tailor. I was a woman in control of her own life. One day, a phone call came. They were inviting me to a women entrepreneurs gathering. As a speaker, at first I said, "Who am I?" Then the voice inside me answered, "You are the woman who found herself even after losing everything." That night I took the stage. I placed my hand on the microphone. The hall was silent, and I simply spoke the truth. I was kicked out of my home, but that day, I laid the foundation for my own kingdom. I owned nothing. But then I realized, a woman who builds herself is the strongest woman in the world. The hall erupted in applause. But my eyes searched for Daniel. He was there. His eyes were shining. At that moment, I was a queen in my own child's eyes. Years had passed. I now had my own business, my employees, my customers, women who admired me. But there was something missing in my heart. One account had not yet been settled. A face, a sentence, a why. One day, it popped up on my social media feed. That woman's name was Jessica. I went to her profile. She looked happy. She had opened a beauty salon. Comments below. "Good for the female entrepreneur. We wish you continued success." Something stirred inside me. Both anger and curiosity, but most of all, confidence. I picked up the phone. I wrote a message. "Hello, Jessica. I'm Milia. Would you like to meet in person? We have things to talk about now." We met at a cafe. When she first arrived, she couldn't look me in the eye. I saw that she was blaming herself instead of me. But I hadn't brought anger with me. I had brought the truth. I started talking. "I met you during the darkest time of my life, but I'm no longer your enemy." She lifted her head, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Milia. I thought he loved me." I smiled a little. "Paul deceived you too. When he left me, I thought I'd be alone. But actually, he gave me the greatest gift." Jessica couldn't say anything. I continued. "You thought? You destroyed my life, but you actually set me free. I didn't fight you, Jessica. I fought myself, and I won." She fell silent. Tears flowed silently. I reached out my hand. "Thank you," I said. "Because without you, I wouldn't have discovered this strength." That day, as I left, I felt lighter. It was like leaving behind a backpack I'd been carrying for years. In that moment, I realized sometimes revenge is silence, and sometimes the greatest victory is forgiveness. I was now forgiving those who had harmed my life, because I had broken free from their chains, because I was now my own hero. When he called me Mom for the first time, the innocence in his voice touched my heart deeply. I had only one wish for him. Not, "Don't be like your father." Protect your heart, my son. Because a child who grows up with hatred will, one day, either break someone else's heart or have his own broken. I didn't want him to break anyone's heart or have his own broken. When my son turned 4, one day I told him to pick up his toys. He puckered his little lips and started to cry. "In the past," I would have yelled. But that day I knelt down and simply asked, "Why does this upset you, sweetheart?" His eyes widened, as if no one had ever asked him that before. Because boys are usually taught, "Don't cry. Be strong. Come on, act like a man." But I didn't want him to suppress his heart. I wanted him to recognize his feelings, because a person cannot love anyone else without first understanding themselves. Over time, I taught him to listen patiently, to apologize, and that saying no isn't disrespectful. I explained that love isn't weakness, but strength. And one day, he turned to me and said, "Mom, my friend broke my toys, but I didn't yell at him, because you said everyone makes mistakes." At that moment, I had to hold back tears. That day, for the first time, this sentence echoed in my heart. I've become a good mother. I wasn't raising my son to be a child seeking revenge on his father. I was raising him to be a better person, because the greatest lesson he would teach was to break the chains of the past with love. And at that moment, I understood. I had not only revolutionized my life, but also my lineage. When I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinded me. But I didn't look at the stage. I looked at the audience. And there, in the front row, he was there. Paul. Years had passed, but his face hadn't changed. Only, there was a shadow in his eyes that I didn't recognize. Was it regret or surprise? I don't know. When the host announced my name, the hall erupted in applause. But my heart was racing with just one question. What is he doing here? Speaking in front of him. At first, it felt heavy, because he was part of this story too. The one he had betrayed, belittled, and tried to crush. Now I had started my own business, given hope to dozens of women, and was a woman applauded on stage. I took a deep breath, and I began to speak. Sometimes life knocks you down, but you take root at the bottom. If your roots are strong, one day you'll bloom. I'm here today to share those flowers with you. At that moment, I glanced at Paul. He had his head bowed. He wasn't clapping, but his hands were trembling. After the presentation, he came over to me. Looking into my eyes, he said only this. "I thought you didn't recognize me, but now you know yourself, and that's more valuable than anything else." A man who had never heard me years ago. Now, for the first time, he was truly hearing me. But I didn't give him an answer. I just smiled and walked past him. Because sometimes the answer is silence. That day I had returned from a long meeting at the office. I was tired. My head was aching. I threw my bag on the chair and went to the kitchen. But something was different at home. The silence. It was peaceful. My son was sitting at the small kitchen table. He was doing his homework. But when he saw me, he put down his pen and quietly came over to me. He looked me straight in the eyes. "Mom, when I grow up, I want to be like you." Time stopped in that moment. For a moment, I just looked into his eyes. I saw someone much stronger than myself. He had grown up watching what I had been through. But he was a child who had never given up on the love that had accumulated in his heart. Eyes filled with tears. But I didn't cry, because at that moment, I was simply happy. A genuine, heartfelt, unconditional happiness. This journey, which began years ago with a woman's betrayal, now continued with a child's dream. I was no longer just a woman, a wife, or a victim. I was a role model. And this was the greatest gift given to me. My son hugged me. His tiny arms wiped away my fatigue. He whispered in my ear, "You're amazing, Mom." And I said to myself, "Your existence is my victory." Years had passed. I had grown up. I had rebuilt my life, gotten back on my feet, and started running again. But there was a page inside me that wouldn't close. The things I left behind in that house, those silent goodbyes, those wounds that wouldn't heal. One day my phone rang. It was my ex-wife calling. Her tone was strange, soft, but shy. "Melia, we've organized a dinner just for the family. We want you to come too. For our son, and a little bit for ourselves." I fell silent. My heart felt like it was about to burst. I was scared, but at the same time, I was ready. When I sat down at the table, everyone froze. In that house, on that couch, in that living room where I had left crying. This time I stood tall. I wore a simple yet elegant dress. My face bore the calmness of a woman who had emerged from battles. That woman was still there. She sat side by side with the other woman in the house. But there was no longer a competition between us. I was now on a different track. When it was my turn to speak, I raised my eyes. I looked into my son's eyes, and I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I am not angry with you. I am broken by life. But I have built a castle for myself from those broken pieces. If I am sitting here today, it's not because I forgave. It's because I accepted silence. Then my ex-husband bowed his head in a whisper. Did we teach you to be this strong? Or were you born this way? I don't know. But I'm sorry. I understood at that moment, this table, these tears. It was my graduation ceremony. The promise I made to myself had come true. Neither revenge nor victory. I only wanted freedom. And now I was right in the middle of that freedom. I stood up. I hugged my son. As I turned around to leave, I said to myself, I didn't forgive the past, but I no longer fight it. When my name was announced, my feet were shaking as I walked towards the stage. But this trembling was not from fear. It was from life completing a circle. Years ago, in the kitchen of the house I left crying, I buried my dreams among dirty plates. Now, in a hall where hundreds of women were sitting, I was going to be hope. I took the microphone in my hand. I stood in the center of the stage. The lights were hitting my face, but my eyes were back in the past. I, Amelia. I was cheated. I was abandoned. I was left homeless. But most importantly, I learned that where a woman says it's over, life actually begins anew. There was silence in the hall. Faces were turned towards me. Each woman had a different me in her eyes. Some saw a husband, some a father, some herself in this story. I was sunk not by what others did, but by the meanings I gave them. And then I changed those meanings. I created a business, a career, a brand out of them. I told the boutique store I built from scratch, the first office I bought with my own efforts, the sleepless days of ordering at night, and the mother-son bond I re-established with my son. At some point, the words got stuck in my throat, closed my eyes and took a deep breath, and I said, thanks to those who left me, I found myself. When I finished my speech, the sound of applause from the hall. It was music I will never forget. Women came up to me. Some hugged me, some cried, some just said, thank you. But the most beautiful, a young girl came up to me and said, after listening to your story, I am no longer afraid. I will start too. That was the first time I felt real success. Money, title, fame. It all goes only so far. But being the courage of another woman, that was an indescribable happiness. My son's engagement. That day was a day I had dreamed of all my life. But there was always a void in that dream. Because in my imagination I had never put my ex-wife in that hall. But fate wanted to test a woman who was healing and getting stronger, once again with the shadow of the past. When I entered the hall, everyone was looking at me. I was not only the mother of my son, I was now a businesswoman, an inspiration, a success story for them. But suddenly, my eyes fell on the man in the back corner. He was my ex-husband, the man who tore me apart all those years ago. His new love had arrived with his ex-girlfriend, who wasn't even young anymore. We locked eyes. My heart didn't speed up, nor did I gasp. I smiled, because there was no anger still burning inside me, because I had no longer built my life on his absence, but on my own presence. When the engagement ceremony started, my son came to me and held my hand. "Mom, this day happened because of you." "No," I said. "This day happened because of your choice, your way. I just decided to be myself." While the music was playing, my ex-wife tried to intervene. At one point, she came up to me. "Milja," he said, "you have changed." "Yes," I said, "because I started where you ended." That night, on the way home alone, I made myself a coffee. I put my feet up on the couch. I looked out the window at the stars and whispered, "I promise to give hope to every broken woman, because healing is contagious." The day the interview was published, I woke up early in the morning. I made my coffee, did my hair, but I couldn't contain my excitement. "This is not just an interview," I said to myself. "This is the moment for me to be visible, to shout out my existence when my name was announced on TV." For a moment, time stopped. I was on the screen. Not the woman who was cheated on, humiliated, and silenced at home years ago, but an entrepreneur, a mother, a human being who has made her own way. The presenter was asking me, "What was the biggest thing that motivated you?" "Being abandoned," I said. "But most of all, not abandoning myself." When the interview was over, my phone didn't stop ringing. But the real surprise were the messages from those women who judged me years ago, who said, "You can't do it," who gossiped about me with their husbands. One by one, they started to write, "I'm proud of you. I wish I had been with you then. I didn't believe you, but now I want to learn from you." Yes. Life plays such strange games sometimes. Those who turned their backs on you yesterday, today they want to sit in the front row on your success journey. But I looked at all of them with awareness, not resentment, because this was no longer just my journey. I became the voice of all the women who were silent, oppressed, and left in the background with me. I answered them all, without condescension, without arrogance, because I know if one woman changes, many things change. The day came, my son's wedding day. For years, as I wiped away his tears, I was also healing my own wounds without realizing it. The wedding hall was sparkling, but there was another sparkle inside me. A proud past, a rebuilt life, and a future full of hope. As the wedding progressed, I took the microphone. People looked at me curiously, but I only looked into my son's eyes. "This is your story," I thought to myself. And then I began to speak. As a mother, I have experienced both the pain of abandonment and the power of rebirth. Today I want to share the words of a woman who grew up with her son. The room was silent. I spoke not out of shame, but out of pride. Once these hands gathered the stones of a ruined house. Today, with the same hands, I offer my son a future full of hope. Life doesn't always treat us fairly, but we learn to stand tall anyway. My eyes lingered on my ex-husband for a moment. He was sitting somewhere in the back. His eyes were filled with tears. He had never even thanked me. But in that moment, that look said it all. I spoke my final words. "My son, never forget that the greatest thing that can wipe away a woman's tears is the certainty that you are by her side." Everyone in the hall stood and applauded. It wasn't me shining under the wedding lights. I was just a woman who had gone through life, standing tall, despite every blow. And in that moment, I knew that no applause could ever surpass the value I had given myself. It was that night I poured myself a coffee. It was a tired evening after work. But I was at peace. My son was married. I was getting stronger at work. Then the phone rang. The number was registered. My sister. She was calling after months, maybe years. I thought to myself that I needed something again. But I was wrong. This time she had come not to ask, but to leak. I answered. His voice was tense. There's something I need to tell you. I can't keep it inside anymore, I choked. At that moment, one can feel alienation even in the voice of someone one calls the closest. He continued, You were offered a job years ago. That job abroad. I refused. I talked to the man instead of you, because I didn't want you to. Go. If you had gone, you would have gotten away from all of us. Maybe you would have succeeded. I would have stayed. I froze. It was like the echo of a decision made in the past. At that moment, it started to beat across the room. While I was questioning why opportunities didn't come my way for years, while I was wondering why I had to build everything on my own, it turned out that I was carrying not one, but two burdens. One was the injustice of life. The other was my brother's jealousy. That conversation didn't last long, but its effect, it silenced me for weeks. But then I made myself a sentence. Melia, when people realize they can't break your light, they try to darken you. I wasn't going to let that happen. A week later, I texted my brother. I have forgiven you, but it may take a little more time to forgive yourself. I hope one day you can lighten the darkness inside you. I didn't choose hate, because anger is exhausting, but forgiveness is freeing, and I wanted to be free from everything, most of all from the past. That morning, I received a message on my phone from my son. Mommy, the ceremony starts at 2:00. I want to see you in the front row. Don't be late. That's when my heart sank. Not for me, for him. My son, the piece of my life that I had raised all by myself, that I had worked so hard for. He was graduating, my proudest day, the moment he realized his childhood dream. But I was at work. There was a meeting, and not just any meeting. It's a big client meeting that the boss cares a lot about. I went up to him and asked him nicely, Can someone else take my place in today's meeting? It's my son's graduation ceremony. He looked at me coldly. Then he said this sentence. This is not kindergarten. Once you choose your family, forget your career. If you leave today, you'll never work for this company again. I froze for seconds. It was a threat. And for the first time in my life, I was either threatened or tested in such a clear way. Tears welled up in my eyes. But I didn't cry. I held my head high, and I just said, I have already chosen my son before you. Today is his day, and I will be there. As I left the office, everyone was looking at me, some in admiration, some in fear, some inwardly saying, I wish I could show this courage. But I didn't care. It was 1:57. I arrived at the ceremony hall. I took my seat just before my son took the stage. And at that moment, my son saw me. He looked at me in the crowd. He smiled. Then his eyes filled up. So did mine. I may have lost my job that day, but in the heart of my child, I left a mark for life and for a mother. This is the greatest achievement in the world. When I came back from the ceremony, there was a notification in my email. Your employment has been terminated. The real issue wasn't that I was going to my son's graduation. The real reason was much darker. My mind went back months ago. My boss kept me in the office one evening after work, ostensibly to talk about the project. But the conversation was short. His tone of voice changed. His gaze changed. His words froze me like ice. I have such an offer for you. If you say yes tonight, you will get your promotion tomorrow. Your life will change." The way he said it, the grin on his face. It made me sick to my stomach. I ran out of the office that night. I was an orphan, I was a lonely woman. And he knew that. He thought I was weak. But there was something he didn't know. I was lonely, but I wasn't weak. After that proposal, things changed. My projects were withdrawn. I was excluded from meetings step by step. He tried to psychologically intimidate me. But I didn't give up. I drew my own path. I built my business plan in secret. Small orders, freelance jobs. I prepared a small but solid ground for myself. And now, months later, there was a knock on the door. I opened it, and there he was, my old boss. He had black eyes and a sunken face. "Melia, I need your help. I'm looking for a partner. I heard you have capital." A storm raged inside me, but I just put a thin smile on my face. "Are you making a similar offer to the one you made that night? Because I am no longer someone to be bought." I never was. As I closed the door, I said this. "When I was walking to my son's graduation, you were just walking to your own downfall. Now, I am the boss of my own company. You will remain there as a stain of the past." And in that moment, for the first time, that disgusting feeling of the past was replaced by pride and strength. The moment I closed that door, I had left not only a man outside, but also the burden of years, the shame, anger, helplessness that had accumulated inside me for years. All of them were left outside the door with that man. I was no longer just a woman. I was a businesswoman. Everything had started from scratch. I can't forget the days when I was sitting on the balcony, putting invoice books in my son's old school bag and walking around. I went door to door. I offered small jobs to everyone I knew. Logo design, organization planning, social media consultancy. The first month I made only $300. But that $300 gave me something no one had given me for years. Hope. At that time, I heard from a friend that there was a small underground women's entrepreneurship community. I attended their meetings. I was nourished and strengthened by the stories of the women there. Some cleaned at night and designed jewelry. In the morning, some strapped their children on their backs and made YouTube videos. All of them were growing quietly, and I was among them. One night, while I was crying at the computer, my son came to me. He didn't say anything. He just handed me a note and went to his room. There was only one sentence written on the paper. "I am proud of you, Mom. I was born from you, but you reborn yourself." That night, I named my company, Reborn. A year passed. My company was now working with 5 women, and each of those women employed another woman. We grew like a chain. We didn't just make money. We believed in each other. We became each other's mirror, voice, shield. Now sometimes I take my coffee in the morning and look in the mirror, and I remember the eyes that told me, "You are just a woman," years ago. Now when I hear that sentence, I just smile, because, yes, I am just a woman, but I am also an initiative, a revolution, a dream. As I was drinking my coffee that morning, a notification popped up on my phone. Melia Johan has been named Inspirational Woman of the Year among local women entrepreneurs. I couldn't believe it. Just a year ago, no one saw me crying in my bedroom. But now on a news website, thousands of women were reading my name. And that day, I had an idea. Why don't I just grow my own company? Why not reach more women? I decided to build a platform for women. My son named it One More Chance. Here women were telling their stories, uploading small jobs, supporting each other, selling their handmade products. Not just a digital marketplace was a home where we embraced each other. The platform reached 150 women in its first month. As the months passed, this number approached 1,000. Each of them were women from different cities, coming from different pains. But they all participated with a common sentence: I will not give up anymore. One day I received an email. The subject line read just this: Teacher Milia, remember me? The sender's name was Lily. Years ago, the night my husband insulted me, my little student quietly put her notebook in her bag and left. She's 24 now. She became a social worker. The sentences she wrote still echo in my heart. You saved me that day. Now it is my turn. I want to join your platform and start a campaign against child abuse. Shall we save more lives together? I cried for hours while reading that email. Not just out of happiness. It was like seeing a seed blossom. I am no longer angry with the past, my husband, that boss, my friends for laughing at me. Because they destroyed me. But I built a house on those ruins, and now the light of that house is guiding other women. When I turned on the TV, the presenter's voice filled every corner of the house. Today we welcome a woman who built her life from scratch. She was cheated on, abandoned, crushed, but she never gave up. Here comes Milia Johan. When I stepped into the lighted studio, applause erupted. But there was still a timid silence inside me, like a child. At that moment, I went back for a moment. That first day, that night when I sat alone in the living room of my house, covered my face with my hands and cried silently, that silent scream that no one heard. Now it had turned into the voices of hundreds of women. The presenter looked at me and said, Ms. Milia, you are not just an entrepreneur. You are now a role model. Thousands of women have applied to your platform. In fact, the Women Entrepreneurship Foundation in the Netherlands wants to collaborate with you. I would be lying if I said I was not surprised. People in another corner of the world had heard the words of hope I wrote in my little room. So our voices can reach farther than we think, I said to myself. A few days after the program, my phone rang. The number sounded familiar, but I couldn't recognize it. I answered. Hello. Milia. It's Paul. Something cold coursed through my veins. I hadn't heard his name in years. My ex-husband. I saw you on TV. I don't know why I called. I was just flattered, and maybe I wanted to apologize. I took a deep breath. This man who once ignored me, cheated on me, despised me. Now he spoke with a trembling voice. I couldn't hold a grudge. I couldn't. Because the darkness he had left, I had turned into light. Thank you, Paul, I said. But I don't need an apology anymore. I forgive myself and I forgive you. Because carrying the past on my shoulders would have hindered my future. He stopped talking, and I hung up. That night I went live on the platform. Thousands of women were on the screen, both sadness and hope in their eyes. Dear women, for years we were told that we were only mothers, only wives, only women. But now we know we are not only. We are the initiators, the nurturers, the resistors, the creators. And the comments flowed. Women who didn't know each other wrote to each other. I found myself in your story. Someone understood me for the first time in years. I will start over too. At that moment, I realized this was not just my story. This was the story of all of us, that invisible path where we hold each other's hands and walk from darkness to light. And I am no longer alone on that path. None of us are. When I opened the window that morning, it wasn't just the air that the wind was carrying. It smelled of freedom. For the first time in years, I felt complete, enough and whole. I was now in a place where I could let someone into my life, not to make me complete, but to stand by my side. When I first met that person, he was not someone I expected. No classic good looks, no wealth. Just a look, honest and clean. His name was Kevin. He was a speaker at a women entrepreneurship seminar. Like me, he had started from scratch and founded his own software company. But what he talked about was not technology, but emotions. When he said, "I learned how to code," but what I really learned was that success comes from the heart. My heart started beating strangely. At the end of the seminar, he came up to me. "I admire your story. Women like you are changing the world. It was very nice to meet you, Miss Millia. It was just a meeting, but one of the cleanest beginnings of my life." Months passed. Talks, teas, walks, and there was no rush, no pressure, no expectations, just getting to know each other. One day she said, "I am honored to walk beside a strong woman like you. I am not promising you a life. You have already made your own life. But if you want, I would like to walk with you." My eyes welled up, because for the first time someone didn't want to complete me. He just wanted to accompany me, and I accepted, without fear, without conditions, without haste. Today I have grown my own business. I founded a mentoring program for women. Kevin and I give seminars together. We did not get married because neither he nor I needed that. We are already together. After years of darkness and pain, the storm in Millia's heart had finally subsided. Life had given her a second chance. With Kevin, they got married in a small, intimate ceremony. Their wedding was filled with both tears and laughter. They had built a beautiful home together. Millia had finally married the man of her dreams. Now she wanted to grow her own business. She wanted to become wealthy. Her first business idea was an online personal development platform for women. She wanted to provide free seminars, mentoring programs, and psychological support services for women. Kevin, on the other hand, set up the technological infrastructure and built the marketing networks. Now my husband and I are retired. We no longer work. We travel the world. Now I ask myself why I went through those difficult times. Now I understand that all the challenges I faced made me stronger. If you like this story, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The next real-life inspirational story is coming soon.